Usually when we crack open a new file for a deep dive, we're looking at something. Well, something contained. A specific scientific breakthrough, maybe a new piece of legislation, a historical biography.
Right, something with defined edges.
Exactly. But today we are looking at something that feels less like a document and more like a siren going off in a crowded room.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
We are diving into a piece of media that is designed, quite literally, to alarm you, to shake you. And just the title alone tells you we aren't in Kansas anymore.
Right, the title is Muslim Woman Takes Off Her Hijab on Live Stream, Then Her Parents Storm the Room.
Right?
It's formatted in that classic all-caps clickbait style that just screams for attention on a sidebar.
It absolutely does. But what's really interesting, and we're here to analyze, is that this isn't a standalone video. The creator identifies it as part 7 of a much, much larger series.
A series called The West Has Fallen.
And that context, that title, it changes everything, doesn't it? If it were just the live stream clip, it would be a shocking viral moment, a blip on the radar, something you see and forget.
A one-off piece of drama.
But by branding it, The West Has Fallen, the creator is positioning this content as evidence. Exhibit G in a massive civilizational trial. The whole premise here is that Western civilization, so the US, the UK, Europe, it's not just struggling, but it's actively collapsing.
And the culprit, according to this narrative, isn't the economy, it's not climate change, it's not even political polarization in the way we usually talk about it.
No, not at all. The argument is incredibly specific. The collapse is being driven by an influx of Islamic ideology, by what he presents as incompatible cultural values.
And a Western government that is either too weak or too complicit to do anything about it.
Precisely. So our mission today is pretty clear-cut. We are going to look at the architecture of this argument. We've got the transcript, we have the descriptions of the clips, and we're going to really dismantle how this content creator builds his worldview.
How does he connect a bowl of Halloween candy to the fall of an empire? I mean, that's the real question here.
It's a fascinating and frankly very effective study in narrative building, and we need to be really, really clear right at the top about what we're doing.
Yeah, this is important.
We are reporting on the content of this video. We're analyzing the arguments made by the host and the specific clips he's curated to make his point. We aren't here to endorse these viewpoints, obviously.
Not at all.
But we aren't here to debunk them either. Our goal is to understand how the story is being told to the millions of people who are watching it and why it resonates.
Exactly. We want to see the world through the lens for the next hour or so. And let me tell you, it is a grim view. The host opens the video by saying, and I'm quoting here, "The West is slowly collapsing."
But it's how he frames it. He does something very clever right from the start.
He does. He frames it in a very specific way that I think will resonate with a lot of people who feel, ignored or powerless.
He creates an immediate separation, a divide between the people and the government. He says, it's not the fault of the people.
Right, so he's already validating the viewer. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. He portrays the government as the villain, the ones who are allowing this to happen, while the audience, the people watching, the people with their phones out filming these clips, they're the resistance.
It's that classic populist framing, isn't it? The citizens are the ones on the front lines with their phone cameras. They're the ones documenting the fall, while the powers that be are just asleep at the wheel.
Or worse, it empowers the viewer. It tells them, you aren't crazy for seeing this. You're the only ones who are seeing the truth. And that framing, that validation, it gives him license to weave together an incredibly diverse and frankly jarring range of content.
It's a real roller coaster. In this one video, we go from something as seemingly trivial as stealing Halloween candy,
all the way to something as incredibly serious as a grooming sting operation, and then into these heavy, heavy theological debates.
And he ties it all together with this one central idea. These are not isolated incidents. They're all symptoms of the same disease.
So let's unpack that. Let's start with the first major pillar of his argument, this idea of incompatibility and, well, outright conquest.
The source opens with a segment that is just designed to shock the listener, to grab you by the collar about the supposed intent of immigrants.
From the United States, and there's a speaker, we assume he's a Muslim speaker based on the context, addressing a crowd. And the language he uses is, well, there's nothing subtle about it.
No, not at all. The speaker in the clip refers to America, to secularism, democracy, and capitalism as cancers.
Cancers.
Yes. He says these are cancers that have spread their illness all over the world.
I mean, cancer is such a loaded metaphor. It implies something that is inherently invasive, something that grows and destroys the host from the inside.
You don't negotiate with cancer.
Yeah.
You don't try to find a middle ground with it.
You cut it out. You eradicate. The people moving to the West aren't doing so to become Westerners.
Yeah, his point is that they're not moving to assimilate. They're not coming to enjoy the freedoms of democracy or capitalism.
No, plainly, he says, they move there for a reason, to spread Islam. He argues that they are using the very rights given to them, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, to essentially dismantle the system that grants those rights in the first place.
It's the paradox of tolerance, weaponized as a central argument. It's out the irony here. This speaker is in America, on American soil, enjoying the freedom to stand up and call America cancer.
And the host warns that this ideology doesn't intertwine with Western culture. He's positing a fundamental, unbridgeable gap. There's no fusion here. It's a zero-sum game.
And he doesn't just leave it at that one clip. He backs it up. He moves to another one from the UK, this time featuring an imam. And this one is even more explicit about the supposed goals.
Oh, this clip is absolutely crucial to the conquest narrative he's building. The imam in the video is heard saying very clearly, the future is ours.
And he's not speaking metaphorically. He goes on to list specific nations. America will be a Muslim country. Russia will be a Muslim country.
Islam will enter every house. That's the direct quote. It sounds like something out of a movie script about, some kind of global takeover.
It does.
Yeah.
But here it is, presented as a real sermon, a real declaration of intent.
He just latches onto this. His commentary is very specific here. He says, they're saying it to your faces. He's really emphasizing that these aren't hidden agendas or some deep state conspiracy theory.
No, he's pointing to public declarations.
Yeah.
He's saying, just listen. They're telling you exactly what they plan to do. He calls them unapologetic and uncompromising.
That word uncompromising feels really important. The narrative here is that the West is constantly compromising, always trying to be inclusive, to be tolerant, to bend over backwards, while the other side, according to this source, has zero intention of meeting anyone in the middle. It's a one-way street.
He's appealing to a sense of weakness in the Western viewer, isn't he? He's saying, look at how strong and unified their conviction is compared to yours. You're divided and weak, and they are not.
Exactly. And to visualize this conquest, to make it real, the source then cuts to a clip from Portugal. It's a very simple but effective visual setup. The camera just pans slowly down a street.
The host issues a challenge directly to the viewer. He says, try to count how many white people you can count.
And that's it. He's using demographics as a visual proxy for conquest. He says, this country was conquered. It's a very visceral way to make the point.
He's not talking about a military invasion with tanks and soldiers. He's talking about a demographic shift that he frames as a total erasure of the native population and culture.
It's interesting how he does it. He doesn't cite statistics or census data, which could be argued with. He just says, look at the street. It bypasses the logical brain entirely and goes straight for that gut feeling of, this looks different, or I don't recognize this place anymore.
That's the power of this kind of media. It relies on what you can see and feel rather than abstract data that you have to process. But then he goes a layer deeper. He goes into the theology.
This is where he tries to ground all this behavior in scripture to give it a sort of divine mandate.
Right. There's a clip included where a speaker is interpreting the Quran. The speaker claims that the Quran, and he says very clearly in the Arabic language, commands Muslims to terrorize the disbelievers.
Terrorize? I mean, what a specific loaded translation to choose. It carries so much weight in the post-9/11 world. It's not subdue or struggle against, it's terrorize.
It is, and the speaker in the clip defines disbelievers very broadly. It's Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, basically anyone listening to this video who isn't a fundamentalist Muslim, according to his interpretation.
TV host uses this to define what he calls the mission of the religion. He uses sarcasm quite effectively here. He contrasts this supposed command to terrorize with the common phrase, Islam, the religion of tolerance.
He's basically saying, look at what they are saying about their own religion versus what you're being told by your media and your politicians.
Exactly. It's an attempt to break the viewer's cognitive dissonance. He's arguing that the tolerance label is just a Western projection, a comforting lie, not an Islamic reality, at least not according to the interpretations presented in these very specific clips he has chosen.
So that's the high-level stuff, the big picture, civilizational war kind of framing. We've got global conquest, cancer metaphors, theological mandates for terror.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. But what makes this source really interesting, and I think what makes it so effective for its audience, is how it pivots from that global scale down to the everyday. It's not just about the fall of nations. It's about what happens on your street, in your neighborhood.
Yes, section 2 of our analysis, cultural friction in public spaces. This is where the narrative becomes really personal for the viewer.
And we start with Halloween, which sounds, it sounds almost ridiculous after talking about global conquest, but the source treats it very, very seriously.
It does, because it's a symbol. The clip shows two women who are identified as Muslim approaching one of those bowls of Halloween candy left on a porch in the US. You know, the setup people leave a bowl out with a little sign that says take one or please take one.
It's the honor system.
Yeah.
The absolute bedrock of suburban civilization. If you can't trust people with a candy bowl, what can you trust?
Laughs. In a way, yes. And in the clip, the interaction is key. One woman says, "I'll take a little bit." She seems hesitant. The other woman just shuts that down immediately.
Right. She says, no, just put the whole thing in the bag. And they do. They proceed to dump the entire bolus candy into their bag and walk off. It symbolizes a complete violation of the social contract. The host frames this as them deciding it is perfectly fine to ruin Halloween for the other Americans.
It's not about the value of the candy. It's about the perceived lack of respect for local customs, for the community, for the other children who will come by later.
It frames the other not just as different, but as actively hostile to the joy and traditions of the host culture.
It's the us versus them dynamic playing out on a front porch. It's saying, they don't want to join in your fun, they want to take it from you. It's a small-scale enactment of the larger conquest narrative.
And from there, we move to the UK for a different kind of friction. This one is about modesty and, well, public censorship.
This clip is fascinating from a sociological perspective. It shows a woman in the UK, and she's just walking down the street with a can of black spray paint.
And she's spray painting over public advertisements, posters on bus stops, things like that.
Specifically, she's painting over the bodies of the models on the posters. These are typical fashion ads, women showing some skin, a shoulder, legs. And she is methodically covering them up, censoring them.
She is imposing her personal standard of modesty on the public space for everyone.
The host is, you can hear it in his voice, he's furious about this. He argues she was invited into this country, but she thought that it's perfectly fine to cover their bodies in a westernized country where it's perfectly allowed to show these things.
He's hitting on that asymmetry again, isn't he? The idea that in a Western country, you have the freedom to show skin, but she is using her agency to erase that freedom for others.
He explicitly says the cultures don't align. He's using this act of vandalism, if you want to call it that, as proof that you cannot simply mix these two worldviews and expect harmony. He's arguing one will inevitably try to cover the other up. It's a battle for the visual landscape of the city itself.
And speaking of visual landscapes and of covering things up and replacing them, we have to talk about the Westminster Abbey clip.
Oh, this is a heavy symbolic blow in the video. The clip is just a shot of the Pakistani flag flying at Westminster Abbey.
Which is, the absolute heart of British religious and royal history. Coronations, royal weddings.
Our TV host makes sure to note that. He says the British flag has flown there for 1,000 years. So seeing it replaced, even if it was for a specific diplomatic reason or a state visit, which the video provides no context for.
No context at all, it's just the image.
It's framed purely as visual conquest. He explicitly calls it what conquest looks like.
It is the visual marker of his whole West has fallen thesis. You look up at your oldest, most sacred monuments and your flag isn't there anymore. It's designed to evoke a profound sense of loss and displacement in the viewer.
So we have the external conquest, the flags, the demographics, the street censorship. But the source also dives into the internal conflict within the Muslim community. And this brings us to the video that gives this whole episode its clickbait title.
The live stream incident. This was genuinely disturbing to watch, honestly.
It is very disturbing footage. It takes place in what the host identifies as a Muslim country. A young female content creator is live streaming to her followers, and she is not wearing a hijab.
And then, just suddenly, her parents storm into the room.
And they assault her. The host describes it as they beat her up, and you see the chaos, you hear the screaming, the camera falls.
Is to dismantle a very specific argument we often hear in the West. The idea that the hijab is a choice.
Exactly. He argues that this violence proves there is no freedom of choice within the religion, or at least within this cultural interpretation of it. He's saying that even in the privacy of your own room, on your own live stream, the enforcement of religious law is absolute and violent.
It serves as a warning, doesn't it? He's saying, this is the reality behind the rhetoric of choice that you're being sold.
He's peeling back the curtain, essentially, saying, you hear the polished PR version, but here is the raw, unfiltered footage. But then, and this is where I think the source gets really interesting and adds a layer of nuance, we get a counterexample.
Right, but it's not a counterexample to the West has fallen narrative.
No, it's a counterexample of what an immigrant should be, according to the host.
Yes, the interview with the Pakistani immigrant in the UK. This is a pivotal...
It sharpens his argument.
So we have this Pakistani man, he's being interviewed on the street, and he says something that probably shocked a lot of people watching. He says, quote, if you're not okay with UK being a Christian country, maybe go to a Muslim country.
He takes a very, very hardline stance. He says that if you cannot abide by the laws of the land, you should be deported. He explicitly criticizes those who come illegally or who come and then try to change the system to suit themselves.
This guy. He calls his stance beautiful. He holds him up as the model immigrant.
He does. He says, respecting the laws, respecting the Constitution. That's it. That's all we ask. But the tragedy of this segment, and what makes it so powerful for the narrative, is what the immigrant reveals about his own life after taking this public stance.
Yeah, he talks about the backlash. He says he gets death threats.
And he's very specific. Only from my own community. That's the key phrase. He says the police won't help him. He even mentions, and this is a wild detail, that he lost his job at the council because he refused to say that white people are racist.
That is an unbelievable detail. He lost his job for saying white people aren't racist.
According to his account in the video, yes. He says his gratitude to the country and the white people who welcomed him prevented him from playing the Victo card, and that it cost him his livelihood. It's an explosive claim.
And he touches on this idea of the silent majority. We always hear that, right? Oh, most people are moderate, they're just quiet.
And this man just shatters that comfort. He says, I don't think there's any silent majority. He admits that some people message him privately, they say they're proud of him, but they will not stand up publicly.
They won't put their own necks on the line.
Exactly. He essentially argues that silence is complicity. If you aren't publicly standing up to the extremists in your community, you are letting them define the community.
There's a powerful indictment. And it reinforces the host's view that the good ones, the ones who want to assimilate, are outnumbered, intimidated, and silenced by the radicals. Which brings us to the absolute centerpiece of this episode. We need to talk about the grooming sting.
This is section 4, and it is by far the most detailed and heavy part of the transcript. Host clearly views this as his smoking gun. It's a pedophile hunter-style sting operation. Looks like it's in the UK.
Let's set the scene for the listener, because the details are important. We have a man identified by the host as a Muslim immigrant who has driven to a specific location believing he is going to meet a 13-year-old girl.
And the details are just so grotesque. He arrives in a white car. The transcript notes he has flowers on his window screen.
Flowers? For a 13-year-old girl he met online. It's this bizarre attempt at romance in a situation that is just fundamentally predatory.
It highlights the delusion, or maybe the cultural disconnect, that the host is trying to prove. He is then confronted by a group of interceptors, the pedophile hunters. And the dialogue here, it's a masterclass in denial.
They ask him point blank, why are you here to meet this child? And his response is just, I don't know.
Nothing is coming in my brain. That's the actual quote. Nothing is coming in my brain. He just completely shuts down and plays dumb.
He repeatedly denies everything. I've never done it in my life. I've got no record. He's trying to play the confused, innocent victim, despite the fact that the interceptors are holding the chat logs, the evidence, right there in their hands.
And those chat logs are damning. They read them out to him. He called the child sexy, beautiful, and gorgeous. He asked about her bra size. It's textbook grooming behavior.
And this is where the cultural clash argument building really comes into sharp focus. The interceptor asks him, do you understand the English law that for you to plan and arrange to meet a child under the age of 16 is illegal?
And the man's reaction is just more deflection, more denial. But then the interceptor drops the bombshell. He quotes a specific message from the chat. The person posing as the child asked the man his age, and the man replied,
Does age matter?
Does age matter? That is the TV host stops the clip right there to analyze that one sentence. He argues that this isn't just a creepy guy, this isn't just a criminal, this is a theological issue.
He links it directly to the Prophet Muhammad and his wife Aisha.
Yes. The host says, and this is his interpretation, for Islamists, 13 years of age is not a problem because Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6 and consummated the marriage when she was 9.
So he's arguing that the fundamental definition of child and adult is completely different in the predator's worldview versus the Western legal worldview.
Correct. And to make this point stick with the audience, The host uses a really striking, really vivid comparison. He contrasts the Western view of a 13-year-old
Right, he says playing with dolls, eating s'mores, having sleepovers, being a kid.
with what he calls the Islamist view, where a 13-year-old is seen as an adult, ready for a career, or, in this case, marriage.
The s'mores versus marriage contrast. It's designed to show that these two people, the predator and the hunter, are operating in two completely different moral universes. One sees a child who needs protection, the other, according to the host, sees a woman who is ready for a husband.
And the host points out the man's demeanor during the confrontation. He's smiling, he's smirking. At one point, the interceptor has to shout, "Stop smiling, mate, because this ain't funny,"
That smile is chilling. It's so out of place.
but as a genuine lack of guilt. He argues that because in his culture or religion, as interpreted by the host, he hasn't actually done anything morally wrong, the English law is just an annoyance. It's not a real moral boundary.
It's perfectly normal in the country that he came from. That's the host's final conclusion on the matter. He uses a criminal act to make this much broader, much more alarming argument. Laws don't matter if the culture doesn't believe in them.
It's a terrifying segment because it suggests that legal integration is impossible without moral integration. You can write all the laws you want, but if a segment of the population doesn't internalize the why behind those laws, they will just try to bypass them. It suggests the West is trying to enforce rules on people who fundamentally reject the premise of those rules.
So we've gone through conquest theory, cultural vandalism, internal violence, and now the exploitation of children, framed as a cultural norm. It paints an incredibly bleak picture. TV host wraps all of this up with a dire warning about the future.
He moves from diagnosis to prognosis. He shifts into what we might call the rhetoric of fear. He warns his audience about what happens if this trend continues unabated. He introduces the concept of the second-class citizen.
He uses a specific historical term, dhimmi.
Yes. He references the historical status of non-Muslims living under Islamic rule. He paints this picture, he says it's from 1400 years ago. He describes a world where non-Muslims had to cross to the other side of the street to avoid contaminating Muslims with their presence.
He talks about the donkeys versus horses thing.
Right, a rule where Muslims were required to ride horses and non-Muslims were forced to ride donkeys, just as a daily public display of their lower status.
And the rule that no church or synagogue could be built higher than a mosque in the city.
It's all about establishing a visual and social hierarchy. And he's saying, this is your future. He's telling the Western viewer, you think you're the majority now, but you are destined to be the guy on the donkey if you don't wake up. It's a humiliation fantasy designed to provoke a very strong, visceral reaction.
And he argues that in many ways, this submission has already started. He points specifically to the loss of free speech.
He issues a direct challenge to the listener. He says, try to criticize Muhammad in front of Muslims, or go to a Sharia country like Afghanistan or Iran and try it.
You're going to be screwed. That's his blunt assessment.
He argues that the fear of a violent reaction has already effectively repealed the First Amendment in practice, even if it still exists on paper. His point is, if you are too scared to say something, do you really have free speech at all?
So, given all this doom and gloom, what is the solution? Does he tell them to vote a certain way or to protest?
No, it's interesting. His call to action is essentially information warfare. He admits the government isn't helping, that the institutions have failed. So he tells the people, we have to post videos, we have to increase awareness, we have to pitch about this.
It's the citizen journalist model again. If the mainstream news won't show it, you have to film it yourself. You have to be the witness to the decline.
Otherwise, it's going to be too late. That's the urgency he injects. But of course, we can't ignore the commercial aspect here. Immediately after declaring that civilization is on the brink of total collapse, he pivots to
his merch. New merch is coming soon. And his Patreon. And his Buy Me a Coffee link.
It connects the ideological crusade directly to a business model. To keep the fight going, you have to fund the fighter. It's a very modern, very digital form of activism, and it reminds us that this is, at the end of the day, a content creator who is building a brand around this specific worldview.
So let's take a step back and try to synthesize all of this. We've just walked through part 7 of The West Has Fallen. It's a heavy, heavy hour of content to take in.
It is. And if we synthesize this deep dive, what do we really see? We see a source material that is constructing a very hermetically sealed, self-reinforcing narrative.
It takes all these completely disparate elements, a candy bowl in the suburbs, a flag on a historic church, a horrific grooming sting, and it treats them all as evidence of the same grand conspiracy.
Exactly. The shortcut takeaway here is that assimilation is a myth. It's a lie you've been sold. He argues that the incoming culture views the host culture as a cancer to be excised or a territory to be conquered.
And because the government has failed in its duty to protect the nation, the ordinary citizen is left as the last line of defense, armed only with a smartphone, to document the collapse.
It creates a world where every single interaction is a potential battleground. If you see someone take too much candy from a bowl, it's not just a rude person, it's an act of civilizational warfare. It imbues every small friction with existential weight.
And that leads to a provocative closing thought for you, for the listener. The source argues over and over that silence is complicity. But consider this. The clips he shows feature vigilante groups catching predators because the police, in their view, aren't there. The clip shows citizens confronting vandals.
Right, it's a celebration of people taking matters into their own hands.
So if the institutions, the police, the government, the courts, are perceived as failing to enforce boundaries, which is the entire premise of this video, does that make the rise of this kind of vigilante journalism, this shame content, the inevitable future of our political discourse?
That is a chilling thought. Are we moving toward a society where justice, or at least the enforcement of social norms, is crowdsourced and live-streamed for clicks and outrage?
It certainly seems to be the direction these sources are pointing. If the state steps back, or is perceived to have stepped back, the digital mob steps forward.
Well, on that cheery note.
Yes, on that note, that's a wrap for this deep dive. It's a lot to process, but understanding these narratives, how they're built and why they're so compelling to so many, is key to understanding the digital landscape we're all living in.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is the only defense.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.